Well, hey there guys, and welcome back. On this week's show, we're making t-shirts again. Well, on last week's show, I went through a method of how to make t-shirts, and I showed you using some tempera art paint and mixing it with either fabric medium or buying pre-mixed versions to make your t-shirts. And it's a fun and viable option for making those shirts. I'll post the link to that show down below. But on this week's show, I'm going to show you something a little different. And that is using proper stretchable adhesive vinyl to place on your shirts. So guys, again, because of the sawdust in the shop, we're not going to be doing this one outside. It takes a little bit of computer work on this one. So we're going to head in and get this one started. Let's go inside. Well, it seems that everything these days is AI, artificial intelligence. And honestly, I'm kind of tired of it. You never know what's real, what's not, but it can have a positive side to it. And if you have no artistic ability, then you can use AI, or in this case, chatgpt.com, in order to help you out. So I've created a free account here, and what I want is I want 3 ukuleles in the form of a triangle. I want that image. So I'm going to ask it to create an image using 3 ukuleles in the shape of a triangle. And it takes a little while to process, but eventually you get yourself an image. And this is what it came up with for now. Now, I don't really like this, so we're going to change this a bit and tell it to make the ukuleles a silhouette. And again, it will think and do its thing, and eventually it comes up with something that looks like this. And this is the image it provided, but this is still not a triangle. So I'm going to ask it, arrange the ukuleles in a triangle shape. Well, this is a little better, but it's not exactly what I'm looking for. So you can continue to play around with this. Now, guys, I have played around with it and I have gotten several images that I like. So we have this one here, and we have another one that looks like this. And between all of them, I have chosen this one that I want to make into a custom t-shirt. So the first thing that we need to do once we have our image and have it saved on our computer is I'm going to drag it into Lightburn. Well, now that we have our image from ChatGPT, I have Lightburn open. Now, why Lightburn? Because I'm familiar with it and because I have it, because I'm used to the way that it works, I find it easier to make my files here in Lightburn. Now, we will be using a Cricut cutter to cut this particular t-shirt design out, and for that I need an SVG file. So that is why I'm going to be using Lightburn, because I know very easily how to make an SVG file using Lightburn. So the first thing we need to do is come up here to the top, and we can click our import and bring in the ukulele image that we made with ChatGPT. Now guys, this is an actual image. We can see that up here in our cut layers that it is an image. We do not want an image. We actually want a line drawing so that we can cut it. There is no way to cut an image. So I've shown you this here on the channel before. We're going to right click on this image, and right down here you can see trace image. And if we click the trace image, it will give us a preview of what the tracing is going to look like. And all of the purple lines are the tracing. So if you're happy with this, you can come down here and click delete the image after trace. If you don't have that click, don't worry, you can do it afterwards. You can delete the image manually, but we'll just click OK. And we can see here that we have our 3 ukulele logo kind of thing right here in a line drawing. Here's the problem though. These are all together, and I don't like the sound holes. I don't like this double line. I want the outer line eliminated. So the very first thing I need to do, I need to ungroup these so that each individual line drawing is able to be manipulated. So we can come up here to the Arrange tab and click Ungroup. And by doing that, we have now separated all of our line drawings. So these inner circles of the sound hole are now by themselves, as is the bodies of the ukulele. And I can show you that here by taking this one, and we can drag it right out of the picture if we want. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to zoom in just a little bit, and I can click on the outer rings of the ukuleles and then just use the delete key on my keyboard to eliminate them. And there we go. And there is our design. But now, so that it doesn't mess up and we don't shift things around, I'm going to drag from right to left. And that will incorporate everything that it touches. And we can go back into Arrange and click Group. Now, there we go. Our design is now back together. Now guys, if you drag from left to right, you'll see that you get the red square. That will only incorporate everything within the square. So it will only group things that are wholly in the square. If you group from right or drag from right to left, anything touching that green square will be incorporated. So if you were dragging from left to right and needed to group these, you would have to start way up top and get that red square to incorporate every single shape in order to group them. Whereas with the right to left green square, as long as it's touching, that's all that matters. It will take the entire shape and group it in. All right, anyway. So what we need to do at this point now is I need to export this. As I said earlier, we need an SVG for the Cricut software. So we're just going to come up to File, click Export, and you want to check your drop down right here to make sure that it's an SVG. There's only really a couple options that you can do, but you want to make sure it's SVG, and then we can title it as ukulele t-shirt. Thought of that all by myself. Okay, and it's going to my desktop, and we're going to click Save. All right, so you can save this as a file on the laser if you want. I'm not going to bother, but at this point, it's time to move on to the Cricut software. So here we have Cricut Design Space. Now, I'm not that good with this program, but this is a fairly simple application that we're doing here. So in Cricut Design Space, once you sign into your account, you can click here on New Project, and you will end up with this canvas here. Now, all we need to do at this point in time, because this is just a single layer project, we don't have multiple layers to cut or multiple layers of vinyl, we can bring our image in here. So what we're going to do is we're going to upload an image, and it's going to be our ukulele t-shirt, which is on my desktop. We will click Continue. This is what we have, and we will upload it. Well, it seems to have eliminated my holes here for my sound holes. I'm not sure why. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to highlight this and get rid of it. And you know what? I'll talk to the expert, being Mrs. Kenny, and see what she has to say about why it did that. Well, as it turns out, my holes are not missing, but these are layers of cut vinyl. Right now, this is all grouped together. So if I right-click it and ungroup them, over here we're going to see all of our different cuts. We have our basic cuts of the 3 ukuleles and the cuts of our sound holes. But here's the thing, they're the same color. That's why we can't see them. So if I were to click on this eye to take away one of the ukuleles, there you go. You can see that we have the sound hole cut is still there. So it's there, it's just the same color, and this is why we can't see it on the screen. Okay, so before we actually connect the Cricut cutter, for those of you that don't know, this is the Cricut cutter, and essentially what this is, if you're not familiar with it, this is the CNC of the crafting world. So this thing cuts on an X and a Y basis, either cuts or draws. You can use it for cardboard, cardstock, I believe even balsa wood, but this is what we're going to use to cut the vinyl. We're going to get into that in just a little bit, but first we need to connect our Cricut cutter to our computer. So the very first thing that we need to do in order to connect this is we're going to turn the power on our machine. And then here in the Cricut design space, we need to find our Cricut cutter. So you're going to come up here to the top of your design, but you want to come up here and click Make. Well, sure, we're going to save our project. And again, we're going to do that creative name of ukulele t-shirt. So with our machine on, before we can connect it, what's going to happen if we don't attach all of these together? This is going to create a file and cut each one of these individually, including those sound holes, but it will shift these to optimize the usage of the vinyl. So we want to highlight all of our ukuleles here, and just come down here to the bottom right. We can see this attach, and what that does is it's going to make it so that all of our objects stay where they're placed in our design, and it will not reorient them. So there we go. We now have that done, and now we can click Make. Now this is what it's going to look like on our cutting mat. We'll get into the cutting mat in just a second, but we just need to connect our machine now. So I'm just going to click Continue. And you can see that it's trying to connect our machine. So we'll just wait for this to connect, and we will go from there. So we have set our machine to iron on, and that is done with this dial right here. And once you do that, it will automatically change to mirroring because it has to be in reverse so that we can iron it on the shirt. Either way, it is now connected, and we need to get some vinyl on our cutting mat. So what I've got here is the vinyl, and guys, this is heat transfer vinyl. It's specifically for making t-shirts. It has a plastic backing, and by following the instructions in the Cricut design space, it tells you to have the shiny side down on your cutting mat. Now these are the cutting mats of the Cricut cutter, and this is an adhesive mat. They come in a variety of different adhesions, you know, light, heavy, that sort of thing. This is just a standard grip mat. So what I'm gonna do is I'm gonna get my red vinyl. I'm gonna do my shirt in red. So I'm gonna get this vinyl cut to size and then stick it here to our cutting mat. And then we'll head back into Cricut design space and get this one design cut. So at this point with our vinyl on our cutting mat, it's telling us that we need to load our tools material. Well, we don't have any tool required here. We already have the blade in, so we now need to load the mat and press the load button. And once you get that done with the tools material loaded, it's now telling us to press Go, which is this little Cricut looking button right here. And it's flashing to let us know that that's the one we press. So the file prepares, and now it will go through and cut our entire design. Like I said, almost like a crafting CNC. So once this is cut, I guess I'll come back and see you, and I'll show you what it looks like at that point. And with that cutting done, we can see here it's telling us to eject it. You can just push this button and it will eject our mat. And now we can remove our vinyl from the adhesive cutting mat. Okay, I've taken the actual vinyl that's cut and I've cut it down to a reasonable size. We didn't need all that extra vinyl. But now guys, you'll want to do something called weeding. And what that is that we're going to remove any bits of the vinyl here, like this sound hole, just like that, that is not part of our ukulele. So we can remove it. The thing with this heat transfer vinyl is that it's actually on a plastic sheet. So it will hold your design intact, but you want to remove everything that you don't want adhered to the shirt. All right, and there is our design weeded and ready to apply to our shirt. Now guys, this clear plastic is actually sticky, so it will stick to your shirt. So what we're going to need now is that ironing board that we used last Tuesday here on the show, and our iron, and of course our t-shirt. Well, the first thing you want to make sure is that your shirt is not crazy wrinkled. We've had these to do for a while, so they've been folded and put in a drawer and that sort of thing. But if the shirt is wrinkled, the vinyl will not properly adhere to it. As well as making sure that it's wrinkle free, you want to make sure that it's lint free. So if you have one of those adhesive lint rollers, you can run it over the shirt and just make sure that there's no dust, pet hairs, that sort of thing that could interfere with the vinyl properly adhering to the shirt. So Mrs. Kenny has these templates that she has for making t-shirts that allow you to align things, center it, that sort of thing. But for reference, this line here, in general, your design is about 3 inches down from the neckline. So we're just going to lay it in place as best we can using the measuring template to try to get it centered. And if we're happy with that, we can just gently rub it down onto the shirt. And I think I'm pretty happy with that there. So we can remove this little template. And again, if you don't have that, don't worry about it. It's not that imperative. You just want to make sure that your design looks right, because if it doesn't, you don't get a second chance at this. So take your time and make sure that it's aligned the way you want it. So now that we're happy with our design, we can iron it on. So you want to place some kind of cloth over top of it. In this case, it's just an old tea towel. It's something to prevent the plastic from melting to your iron. And we're going to iron this onto our shirt. You want to hold it in place for 10 seconds or more to get the adhesive of the vinyl to adhere to the fabric of the shirt. Now there is a trick to know whether or not you have it adhered enough, and what that is when you pull the plastic away, the vinyl will almost have kind of like the same texture as the shirt. And if you've got that same texture, then you have it adhered properly and you're done. And once you're happy with the adhesion, you can just very carefully pull off the plastic backing. Guys, I'll caution you to do it slowly because some of the vinyl may not be completely stuck. So pay attention to the areas that are not completely stuck, and you could always give it another ironing with the cloth over top of it afterwards, just to make sure it's completely sealed down. And that would be our t-shirt design done. Now guys, unlike the paint, as long as you have that design in the Cricut design space, you can make as many of these as you want. With the freezer paper and paint method, that template is destroyed, so it's just a one-off. But this, you can do multiples. Either way, it's a great way to make a shirt, and if you have this kind of equipment, being the Cricut and that sort of thing, you can easily do this. And if not, well, you know what, you can cut it by hand too. And there you have it. Making t-shirts with vinyl and a Cricut cutter. Now guys, I can already hear the comments now. Guys saying, oh, I don't have a Cricut cutter. I don't have this. I don't have light burn like you use to make the SVG. I don't have this. You don't need that stuff. I used it because I have it. Why did I use light burn? Because I have the program and I'm very comfortable with light burn in using it with my laser engravers, so it's just a natural progression for me to make the pattern on Lightburn in a program that I'm comfortable with and then export it as an SVG in order for the Cricut cutter to be able to see it. Do you need that? Do you need the Cricut cutter? Do you need the Lightburn? Do you need an SVG file? No, no. Guys, I showed you on last week's show how to do it using freezer paper and cutting it by hand yourself. You can do the same with vinyl. Vinyl is not a product that you need a special cutter to cut it. All you need is a sharp knife. Can you cut it with your laser engraver? No, do not do that. There is chlorine involved in the vinyl, and if you cut it, melt and burn chlorine kind of thing, you're getting into something here with corrosive chlorine gas or fumes coming off of that, and we really don't need that. So it's poisonous, don't do it. But cutting vinyl with an X-Acto knife with some careful movements is very easy to do. Vinyl cuts easily and is very forgiving when it comes to applying a knife to it. So you don't need the Cricut cutter. What the Cricut cutter does and what Lightburn does and the SVG file is it provides you a way to get extra detail quickly and efficiently. You can get some great looking detailed shirts that would never be possible with a knife and cutting it by hand. You know what? That's actually not true. It probably would be possible, but it would be a lot more time consuming and a lot more difficult. If you have the technology, and I'm lucky enough that I do have the technology, using the Cricut cutter and using the computer to be able to produce an SVG file that the Cricut cutter can read, it just really opens things up. Obviously, the t-shirt method with the paint, that's an artistic thing. If you're more artistic that way, then by all means, like I said in last week's show, you can do that freehand or by using the freezer paper stencil. But if you don't really have the artistic ability and you really want an artistically inclined or a detailed t-shirt, vinyl is your best friend. And unlike paint, I pointed out in last week's show that paint is better suited for a lighter colored t-shirt. Vinyl is opaque. It's solid colors. So you can put it on whatever color shirt you want. If you like black shirts, like I'm always in a black shirt, then you can put it on a black shirt. You like brown, you like dark blue, you like red. Vinyl is better suited for the colored shirts because the vinyl doesn't allow the background color to bleed through and come up through the colors of the vinyl. So there's another option you may want to look at. Either way, guys, no matter what method you choose, whether it's the one on last week's show with the paint and the fabric medium, or whether it's the vinyl that we showed here on today's show, either way is an amazing way to make yourself some t-shirts, and it's a heck of a lot of fun. Guys, I want to thank you so much for tuning in. I hope you've enjoyed the show today. If you haven't already, if you found any part of today's show interesting, informative, entertaining, why not like and subscribe to the channel? We have an amazing audience base, and I'm truly hoping that you're going to consider becoming a part of that. Guys, once again, thank you so much for tuning in. I hope you've enjoyed the content. I hope you're going to give this a try yourself if you have a Cricut cutter or have access to some vinyl. But more importantly, I hope you're going to join me again next week when I bring you yet another Alternative Tuesday.